Malaria is still a killer disease in Africa and responsible for around 580,000 deaths every year. Around 78% of deaths are children under 5 years of age. Africa has around 95% of malaria cases and deaths in the world. It is necessary to tackle malaria because it directly hits the most vulnerable section of society, like infants and children under 5 years of age, pregnant women, internally displaced people, migrants and refugees. Africa has around 95% of malaria cases and deaths in the world. It is necessary to tackle malaria because it directly hits the most vulnerable section of society, like infants and children under 5 years of age, pregnant women, internally displaced people, migrants and refugees. In general, the rural population in Africa is more impacted by malaria. In sub-Saharan Africa, there is an increase observed all across the area in malaria cases, which represent nearly 94% of total cases globally. African countries particularly hit by malaria are Nigeria, with 27%, the Democratic Republic of Congo, with 12%, Uganda, with 5%, and Mozambique, with 4%. These countries have half of the malaria cases in the world. Only Rwanda has observed a decrease in cases over the years. Cape Verde is the only country free from malaria. The reasons for the malaria problems in Africa are many, with lack of resources being the main obstacle. A large section of the masses in Africa cannot afford or get covered under the government schemes for the treatment services for malaria. It is also observed that in parts of Africa, mosquitoes responsible for transmitting malaria have developed resistance to older insecticides. The impact of malaria is observed beyond the direct impact of morbidity and mortality. Its direct impact is seen in productivity at work and its impact on the growth of the economy. It was calculated that between 1965 and 1990, the economic growth was much lower in malaria-infested countries, with average growth per capita GDP recorded at 0.4% per year. In other countries, the growth in per capita GDP was observed at 2.3% per year. For children, malaria impact is seen in the fall of school attendance, and in a few cases it is observed that malaria can impair intellectual development. In the fight against control of malaria, several measures like access to primary health services and insecticide-treated mosquito nets are effective, and the malaria vaccine is yet another important step. The effort to develop malaria vaccines has been continuing since the 1960s. However, a major breakthrough in research and development was achieved in the last decade. This breakthrough bore fruit in October 2021 when the World Health Organization, WHO, recommended the use of the RTS, S/01 vaccine for children in sub-Saharan Africa and other malaria-infested regions. The WHO further approved another malaria vaccine, R21/Matrix-M, after 2 years. The efficacy of these vaccines is calculated as it reduces uncomplicated malaria cases by around 40%. Its efficacy in severe malaria cases is around 30%, and in all-cause mortality by 13%. The malaria vaccine is seen as a great step towards fighting the malaria virus and preventing thousands of deaths. India-based Serum Institute sent 43,200 doses in the first batch of the 1,63,800 doses which are manufactured in its facility. The first batch was sent to the Central African Republic, and in the subsequent phases it will be sent to other countries like South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Serum Institute of India has the distinction of being the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines by number of doses. It has a manufacturing facility in Pune with an annual capacity of 4 billion doses. It has the distinction of supplying over 2 billion doses of the COVID-19 vaccine worldwide. The vaccine is developed jointly by the Jenner Institute at University of Oxford and Serum Institute of India, with adjuvant technology provided by Novavax Inc., an American biotechnology company. The project got support from the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership, the European Investment Bank and the Wellcome Trust. It is an affordable vaccine, but without compromise on quality. Apart from the malaria vaccine, India has made a significant stride in the removal of malaria. The World Health Organization has highlighted India's stride in removal of malaria. India faced a big burden of malaria in 1947. It was a major cause of death in the country. The government undertook the National Malaria Control Programme in 1953. Over the years, this programme was strengthened, and a dramatic slowdown of malaria cases took place in the country. The government of India has set a target of 0 indigenous cases of malaria by 2027 in the country. It has further set a target of sustained elimination by 2030. India has launched a dedicated nation framework for malaria elimination, or NFME, for the phased elimination of malaria and to achieve the above-mentioned target set by the government. The government has targeted vulnerable sections of masses in urban as well as rural areas and people living in tribal, forested areas for malaria removal. It has undertaken mass screenings and timely treatment in these areas. These were made possible with an emphasis on primary health care and with enhanced quality assurance of malaria microscopy. The government also provided extra budgetary support to areas which are highly vulnerable. For the precaution, the government has distributed long-lasting insecticidal nets to the masses. These efforts were continued even during the COVID-19